I'm having a hard time, Kenny, as we say good morning to you again, reconciling how the players have been absolved of any responsibility here by the team, yet they apologized for something today. The whole thing is a little curious.
Matt, there is a disconnect there. There's no question about it, but it stems from Major League Baseball's decision to go about it this way. And Rob Manfred, the commissioner, said in September 2017 he was going to hold the leaders responsible. And everyone is in lockstep. The owner of the Astros, Jim Crane, Major League Baseball, they're not holding the players responsible. Therefore, that's why they were not penalized. Now, that said, what went on in the clubhouse, the comments that were made there, as opposed to what Jose Altuve and Bregman said outside, which was obviously scripted, the comments in the clubhouse were much better, much more genuine, much more remorseful, and honest. So the players did say the right things once they got out of the formal setting, once they were not as coached, although I'm sure they were told or at least went over what to say. It was a lot better. Correa in particular was quite eloquent about what they did. He admitted what they did had an impact. So the way this was set up by baseball is that the players were not going to be punished. And there's some rationale for that. It's not out of the blue or unreasonable in some ways. Remember, they would have had to have fought the union. Remember, they could not have gotten the information they had gotten if they did not give the players immunity. So there were some reasons, but the players definitely know there is a reason to apologize. They understand that, and that's what we heard once the clubhouse opened.
You know, Ken, one of the things you said, the word impact, and it came up in the press conference with Jim Crane on how this impacted the game. And I know he'd love to walk those words back where he said it didn't impact the game, and you're saying Carlos Correa said it did. I'm curious your reaction being there as one of the reporters at that time when this was going on.
Harold, it reminded me of when we were discussing steroids years ago, and people would say, well, we don't know their exact impact. Okay, why are players using them? And what Crane said initially was, our opinion is this didn't impact the game. We had a good team. We won the World Series, and we'll leave it at that. Moments later, he was asked a follow-up question, do you really believe that it didn't impact the game? And he said, I didn't say it didn't impact the game. So clearly going through both sides of his mouth there. But again, if it doesn't impact the game, why are you trying to do it? And that is an obvious thing for anyone to look at and assess. Now, the exact impact, how much it helps certain players versus others, that's all debatable. But if it didn't have an impact, the players would not have been doing it.
Hey, Ken, one thing, I think you were there, we were getting all this coming in, with Justin Verlander. And it might have even been you questioning him. When Verlander came in that September and for the big run, and he had actually said he came in there and had said a few things, and then he said, I will keep that to myself, what I discussed with my teammates. But I thought, wow, that was pretty powerful in that we saw a little split camp with the Astros.
Well, what I heard from him, Harold, was that he did not believe he did enough, that whatever he said, it wasn't enough, and he thought he should have done more. I was only there for a brief part of that, but again, I don't know exactly what happened. And clearly, even if he had said something, Harold, it wasn't enough to stop it. So from that perspective, he recognized, at least during the portion of the conversation that I was present for, that he did not do enough. And every player will say the same thing. Some didn't realize it was as wrong as others. There was a number of different opinions on that, but the consensus in there was, hey, we did wrong, we understand it. And the one thing that Bregman said in his prepared statement that I liked is we have to regain the trust of people. And I don't know that they ever will for some people, but that is their mission now, and I'm sure that's the way they're going to go about it.
Here's something that that I think applies, and it sounds to me, Kenny, like the choice of words used by the players has been so carefully scrutinized for a couple reasons. First of all, they don't want to give up anything that they don't have to. Secondly, if there's an outright denial, if they are firm on certain things and then they're proven otherwise, it's going to open up this really dreadful can of worms for everybody involved. But in the absence of any new information, how reasonable is the expectation that this story will go away as quickly as the Astros would like it to?
It's not going away, and they understand that. And there were a number of questions reporters asked about, hey, what happens when you guys go on the road? what are you prepared for? And the players understand that they're going to hear it. So eventually, like all stories, Matt, it will subside, but I don't know that it subsides as quickly as the Astros would like. In a perfect world, it would go away tomorrow. But they seem to understand, no, that's not the way it's going to be. Now, the really interesting part to me is legacy. And as we go forward, how much are these players affected? How do we perceive them? How do we perceive the 2017 championship? Even the 2019 World Series run, in which everyone is saying no buzzers. They were repeatedly asked that. They were adamant about that. No buzzers were used. But there is, rightly or wrongly, a level of disbelief among some people that they're not telling the truth there. Now, again, there's no proof, there's no evidence, nothing has come up along those lines, but people are going to believe what they want to believe. And when you are found to have committed violations in 17 and 18, people are going to wonder about 19 as well.
Hey, Kim, when I look back at today, and a lot of the news came out, and players were speaking in the locker room, the impact of the spoken word. And you're the guy who wrote this and got this thing broke open. I'm curious your reaction to hear guys say, yes, here's what we did, and kind of confirm all the reports that you've had for a number of years. I thought it was really interesting because you still want to have that little kid in you that says, oh, this didn't happen, even though you've had the reports and everything come up. To hear somebody say, yes, here's what we did is really powerful. I'm curious, you being the reporter who broke this, how'd you react to all that?
Well, by this point, Harold, the question of whether this happened is not even a question. We had our report. The commissioner's report basically confirmed that report and went beyond. In fact, we did not have 18 in our initial report. We did not even have the 17 postseason confirmed exactly. So that part of it's done. And you're right, Harold. I'm sure there are players who would like to say it didn't happen, but at this point, there is ample evidence that it did happen, and there's been confirmation that it did happen. Their general manager lost his job because it did happen. Their manager lost his job because it did happen. So there's no place to go here if you're a player and say, I don't think so, guys. It wasn't like you wrote it, or it wasn't like the commissioner said. They know now, and everyone knows now what happened, and basically what the players are doing is reacting to this knowledge.
Ken Rosenthal joining us from West Palm. A very busy day down there, very eventful day down there. And just as a point of note, the Astros open the season at home with a series against the Angels. Then they go to Oakland, and they play 12 of their first 18 on the road. How do you think those folks in Oakland will be
Oakland's
welcoming
the most difficult one
oh, boy,
of all
no doubt.